Hi, I'm Will Nixon, and I want to introduce the crow to you by reading a passage from a wonderful old natural history book. It's called A Natural History of American Birds of Eastern and Central North America. Classic used book. It was published in 1939, and so as I read this, you'll feel that it's describing kind of a rural America of the 1920s and 30s with hunting and farming and activities like that. It's long before suburban America. Here's what they have to say about the crow. Unfortunately for the crow, he has a bad reputation, and it must be admitted that there is some reason for the low regard in which he is held among men. First, he is black, the color of evil. Then, he knows too much. His judgment of the range of a gun is too nearly correct. If crows could be shot oftener, they would be more popular. Harry Ward Beecher once remarked that if men wore feathers and wings, a very few of them would be clever enough to be crows. Also, as Dr. N.A. Cobb says, the crow rises too early. We have to get up very early in the morning to get ahead of the crow. Most of us rarely see the sun rise, and while the sluggards still slumber, the early crow is up to some abominable mischief in the backyard. It irritates us to have this disreputable fowl take such a mean advantage of us, especially as we know that it would not have happened had we been up and about as we know we should have been. Then, according to human standards, the eastern crow is a thief and a robber. He steals eggs, chickens, corn. He robs songbirds of their eggs and young. And so he is vilified and anathematized, pursued and destroyed at every opportunity, but all to little purpose. For we may well believe that there are more crows in the country now than there were when the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock. Today, then, the crow is the great American bird. Everybody knows him. How many people have ever seen the American eagle except on the silver dollar? But who has not seen the crow? If a person only knows 4 birds, one of them will be the crow. The bird is well known because he is large, black, ubiquitous, and noisy. He is well worth knowing. Each crow is a character. There is more difference in crows than appears as they fly over. I'm going to read a poem from an early book of mine called My Late Mother is a Ruffed Grouse, which is an entirely different story. This is an early poem about childhood, and it has crows in it, kind of to my surprise, because I wrote it long before I knew I would be taking crow photographs, but I guess it shows that crows are everywhere. The poem is called When I Had It Made. When I had it made, I had loose teeth that became nickels under my pillow, a wooden trunk filled with plastic pirate gear, and a black eye patch my mother wouldn't let me wear to 2nd grade. I trapped crickets in jelly jars and fed them grass blades until they died, and joined my collection of dried starfish, rocket stamps, and Canadian pennies. I practiced lassoing with the laundry line and almost caught the squirrel my mother hated for running on the roof gutters whenever she tried to nap. One day, I crawled out from my window and climbed the sandpapery roof shingles to the crest of the house, where I sat practicing for an unsaddled horse and saw things I'd never seen before. The daisy window for the neighbor's attic filled with lamps. The green hills hunched like ants along the horizon, where I bet some Indians still lived. When the paper boy came, he didn't see me spying and didn't know a black lab was racing around the corner after his pants. When Dad walked home, whistling and swinging his briefcase, he didn't see me almost as high as the crows. He carried his gin and tonic onto the patio, opened the newspaper to the Little League scores, and told my mother in the kitchen the next library lecture was about robins. When I grew up, I decided, I would be an angel who watched people like this all day. I saw the first star at the end of the blue sky and didn't come down until the sunset put the smallest clouds to sleep.
Okay, so this painting is a good example of generally how I work and relate to and construct the image. It actually began completely upside down from the way that it is right now. And it was a failed painting that actually was split in two, and this piece here is the residue from the original. And the original was actually up here. But as I said, I flipped it upside down, and I simply started free associating to what was there. And I had this split, and I had this. And the first thing that I did was actually drew the outline of what is a sneaker. And the implication of that, a suggestion of that as actually a foot or a shoe, then started to give me the whole of the rest of the image. The thing that I really love about it is this great movement up, because this great movement up immediately then suggested to me the legs. So the legs became this great big arch, and at the top was the head, and the blue, of course, continued straight into what was then going to become the head. And all the rest was simply free association. So there is no source for this. It is, in fact, its own source. And that's typically the way that I like to work, the way I like to generate images. So I sort of use little clues, little ideas, little thoughts that go through my mind, images that come to me, and I draw from those things, and then attempt to actually integrate them and create a totality of an image that never was before. All right, so I think this painting is actually about loneliness. And in a way, I think the woman in the painting is myself. And I think it is a statement in part about this time of COVID and the fact that we are also isolated from each other and really dependent very much on our own inner resources. So I think there's an emotional aspect to the piece which is resonant for me. In this case, the whole work originated from marks that I made. Actually, I was building face, and the face was not working for me. And so I simply picked up a rag and I smudged out the face, and it smudged the paint, and it made that. And it's this kind of thing that I actually look for on the canvas. It's like the accidental thing that carries the energy of the work. And so from a small piece like that, I can then free associate in such a way that the whole of the rest of the work begins to sort of build from it. But in a way, it sort of needs that particularity, some quirky particular thing happening in the paint on the canvas for the rest of the work to actually happen. So I don't know what the end of a work is going to actually look like. It's something that I discover while and from the painting itself.
Most of them are from the 80s, mid-80s, late 80s, you know. This one, and I work from my imagination 99% of the time, so whatever happens, happens. Then I give it a, I give it a sort of a title later on after it's done. But this painting actually freaks me out because it reminds me of some of my deep inner feelings that I don't, that I don't really want to look at all the time. You know what I mean? So, in fact, many times I was going to throw it out, but I figured, nah, it's there. It's an oil on canvas. This one, another one, I was in an abstract painting class at the Art Students League, and I just don't feel like doing what everybody else does, So I just kind of started out with a shape, and then this is what it grew into. And I guess it's kind of my mother, without hair. My mother was she was horrible in some ways, But that's, that kind of thing, So there's not much more to say, except that it's kind of beat up on the edges, which is kind of, I was going to try and fix it, but I figured I'll leave it because it's kind of, maybe it goes into past lives and very old, bad karma. That way, This is another one I did. I was living in an ashram in South Fallsburg, New York, with my wife, my first daughter. And late at night, I was just kind of like doodling on a piece of wood, and this is what came out of that. I don't know. There was no photograph, no inspiration. Just I like the shapes of things. Like when you look at the Renaissance art, a lot of it. It's not so much the religious thing. It's the way the shape is. To me, anyway, the shape of it sort of like can go smoothly into the heavens. Nothing to do with Christianity or Judaism. It's just the way that those shapes, that kind of. So that kind of inspired me for that. And this one, again, was an abstract, and I reworked it over the years. I kept adding things to it. I added that later on. And the story I give to it is the mother protecting the child from going to war, or, this is the umbilical cord, and not letting it see what's really going on, so it's hiding. What it really means, I don't know. It's kind of deep psychological stuff for me, But the head is kind of lit up, because I think I've had UFO experiences in my past. And as I was working, it started creeping out, this kind of thing, Again, with a bald head. So I don't know, mine's getting that way too, but it's okay. This one also at the Art Students League, it was in a classroom in a model. There was other things going on in there, but I just focused in on her. I think there was 2 models at the time. But as I'm working, I realized that it's kind of the shape of it's sort of a serpent kind of a shape to it. If you look at it a certain way, if you take a quick look at it sometimes, because the shadow cuts off the light here and turns it into something else. This is my own vision. I'm not, But there's something more than the figure there to me, and a reflection of whoever that is. This one, I think this is probably my mother again. But I realize that sometimes I paint it, there's tricks happening, in visual tricks. This one, sometimes the black seems to pop out or goes in, and this pops out and goes in. It's kind of like push and pull kind of thing, But the look on her face is pretty, it's kind of like, better behave yourself, kind of thing. This one, after I did it, was the commandments, the tablets, the commandments, breaking through it. And spirituality is some kind of I just can make up stories about it. It's that's basically what it is. It's cracking through that. In 1979, I had a breakdown, and I got really to a point where I was going to do myself in. But obviously, I didn't do that. But then I wound up living in an ashram after that, because I had a breakdown first. Then I would have dreams of buildings crumbling, you know, and then I had a breakdown, and then I wound up living in an ashram and studying, you know, meditation and stuff like that. But I have a long way to go. I mean, I have another couple of lifetimes probably before I can really, you know, get some total benefit out of it. Okay, and this one is a painting on a piece of wood, and again, there's certain shapes that I just like. Like even her head is kind of the same shape as this, and this child's head is the same shape as that, and this is almost the same shape. There's something, and the pear is almost, you know, if you turn the pear upside down, it would look something like this. I didn't plan it this way; it just happened to be that way, and have a little bit of light here, which is this reminds me of my grandmother. I come from a Jewish background. My grandmother ran away from the Cossacks. They killed her brother, and then she ran through the woods with one of her kids, naked through the woods to get away, you know. So somehow this reminds me of that. It's kind of European, kind of Eastern European feeling to it, you know. And there's still a light out there, which kind of like takes away that dense heaviness that's going on here, you know. It's a little bit of light, you know. But it looks like a light bulb. That's the only strange thing about it. It doesn't look like like a moon or something. It looks like a light bulb. And I love blacks and grays, you know, but I try to make them happy instead of black and gray.